Welcome. I am going to talk about monitoring systems as a service and the kind of tricky line you have to walk between giving good M&O and just taking a big pile of money and burning it for temporary warmth. And so this is me. I run a monitoring and observability team, came from a site reliability background. My love is incident management, reviews and analysis, and blameless culture from a very practical point of view. I work at Udemy. I've been there for 8 years because I really like it. It's an online learning and teaching marketplace, and we've got like 73 million learners and like 75,000 instructors, and it's really cool. And I'm going to talk about monitoring systems as a service, how fun they are, the experience that we've had and how we got here, and good ideas and profit and all that. So in terms of like, what are monitoring systems as a service? You guys know this, but it's basically, Datadog and Honeycomb and New Relic and all of those companies that are downstairs. Like, there's a lot of them. And in terms of why would you use one? They're very cool, very complex tools. You do not have time to be doing that, and they do it for you. They know what's the industry, best practices, what are the new technologies that are coming down, and they do all that for you. They're taking care of, the code, the storage, the library updates, so you don't have to. Because quite often you have many, many other things to do. So the pros, someone else is doing all the work. You don't need staff to build it. There's always new features coming out. It grows with you. And there's really great UIs that you would definitely not do. And so therefore there's less time needed for training. And there's a single pane of glass for your staff for troubleshooting, which I think is hugely important in terms of correlation for issues and like finding all the cool things that are happening. The cons, yeah, someone else is doing the work, but you're paying for it. You don't need staff to build it, but you do need staff to admin it. And as your usage ramps up, that need becomes much more, important. So there's new features coming out. The price will reflect that. It grows with you. The bill also grows with you. And if the UIs are really good, you're possibly going to neglect the training you do on this. I just say that as something I definitely haven't done, no. So you're only going to have a single pane of glass if it meets all of your needs. You're probably going to have some niche things where you need another tool. So it's rare that you're going to have a single pane of glass and you're not going to need something special for video performance or mobile or mad things. So it is a complex system and you need to pay attention. Again, this is if somebody has told you should care. If this is not your thing, you know what, go along your happy way, it's fine. But this is kind of one of my favorite slides. So it's like a little mini cloud and with all the levels of complexity. And you would never give somebody full admin rights to AWS and go do engineering stuff. I believe in you. Like, that would be irresponsible and terrible. And it's a pattern when there's lots of new companies in this space because there's money. It's really, really a pattern of a lot of people making bad decisions and screwing up and cost wastage when the FinOps tooling add monitoring systems as a service to the profile where they're saying, let us help you with your AWS bill, your Azure bill. Let us help you with your Datadog bill. When they have the monitoring system products in there, other people are not managing it very well. So why I'm talking to you? So Udemy, we've had a fun journey here. So Udemy, I've been there since 2016, but 2015 was the first year they started to use a vendor-provided monitoring system. So small startup, less than 200 staff in total, like a handful of machines, all single points of failure, I would like to point out. It was scary. There was no cloud, no VMs, no auto-scaling, brand new SRE team, kind of winging it. Constant firefighting, lots of chaos. We just had a monolith, one main on-call team, and only really 3 teams could impact or change infrastructure. And the SRE team were the main admins of the monitoring solution when they had time. Spoiler, they had no time. And then Udemy, as it is now, it's a public company, about 2,000 staff in total, so still kind of small. Much larger infra footprint. It's all cloud, Kubernetes, auto-scaling. It's a very mature SRE org. The problems we have now are all related to growth and increased complexity, which is fun also. We have services on Monolith, a minimum of 40 teams on call, and we've got infrastructure as code, and lots of teams can change the infra. So there's a lot more change factors, less chaos, but there's a lot more going on. So there's a monitoring and observability team, which I run, and we are the main admins of the monitoring solution. So Udemy is like engineering. It's very normal. And if you take any company that is over 10 years old, you've got your tech debt, you've got your orphaned code, you've got engineers that are busy, they have deadlines, they've got to work on this product. So, and then we also have considerable growth moving from monolith to microservices, lots of complexity. So there wasn't really a dedicated team for the monitoring solution. So it kind of got interesting. And it got interesting enough then in 2021, somebody was like, oh God, we need to do something about this. And so we made a monitoring and observability team. And the goals were our monitoring system costs are predictable and reasonable. We are providing a good monitoring and observability experience to our devs. And so we started, but it was like, those shows where you buy a container and you don't know what's in it and you think it's going to be treasure, but it's mostly garbage. It was like that. It was this huge amount of tech debt and really expensive skeletons is the best way I can describe it. And so step one was get in there and triage and stop the flood. Oh yeah, another reason we had that team was we figured we could easily pay for the entire team many times over. That was true. So we had to stop the flood, but we could not disimprove or reduce M&O or be seen to do that. Because if people think, oh, that team is just going to stop us using the tool, if you say no to everything, they're going to bypass you. They need to get their stuff done. So you need to be really clear with the message of monitoring and observability is important. We are willing to spend money on the tooling that you need. And then I usually counter with, the reason I'm asking you about this is, look at this other list of dumb things I have found. They're like, oh God, yeah, fine, cool, Joan, that's fine. And it's a lot easier to make the argument for, hey, can I have this new function? You go, cool, how much is it? Great, we've just saved that from this other thing. I don't even have to go and ask permission from any powers that be because I've already just clawed that back. So start by looking at your bill, really, really look at it. And you gotta and is it confusing and terrible? Probably. I'm not saying it's in the vendor's best interests for the bill to be confusing and terrible, but it's not in their best interest. So go through the bill and make a list of questions. So is there only one account? That's a fun surprise you might have. What's the biggest part of the bill? Do you understand what every line is? You need to. Do you have access to the historical bills? Because basically you need to know what normal is. There's the bad normal, what's going to be the new normal and the good normal, but you need to be able to spot the trends. Can somebody get you a CSV list of all of the usage and cost stats? And again, usage and cost, they may not directly correlate. There may be special magical multipliers, or there could be something in your contract that you do effectively get for free, so it doesn't matter if it's massive until they change the contract. But so you get your list of questions, and then you reach out to your account manager. Now, account managers are lovely, lovely people. I'm not just saying this because I'm friends with lots of the Udemy customer success managers, but they're effectively professional people pleasers. They want to keep you happy. Yeah, they have to keep their company happy, but they keep their company happy by keeping you happy and keeping you using the product. So have meetings with them. They are an incredibly valuable resource. Have so many meetings with them that they know the name of your dog. If they don't know the question, or if they don't know the answer, they'll go find out. If you're having issues with a particular feature, and say, okay, look, this is really high cost, but I don't know how to drop it. I don't want to turn this off, but can you help me out? Our account manager has been fantastic and says things like, let me go get the product SMEs. The product SMEs went, why are you using it that way? That is deranged, it's low value and really high cost, and it's a real waste of money. And they were able to tell us to do it properly, because if you have just inherited a giant pile of crap, you probably aren't using it properly. So that was a real, win for us. So again, talk to them. They are a really, really valuable resource. And if they're not a really valuable resource, ask for another one. You're probably spending enough money that they'll just do that. But generally, very sound. And again, back to the thing of the bill is terrible, it's confusing. They might have numbers, but there's no very clear view that's showing you trends. Make your own view. Do what I do, commit terrible crimes against data presentation. You're gonna see more. Learn to love spreadsheets. Like people say to me, Joan, can I talk to you about our vendor bill? And I go, let me share my spreadsheets with you. And then they back off because they're slightly frightened. So again, this is one of our redacted graphs. Let me tell you, it's not zero. It's definitely not zero. I just had to cut off the big numbers. But yeah, so this was, I think, our team started in January 2021. I only got staff in August, and then we started to, and you can see it was growing, and then we got staff, and then it started to drop a bit. So, but again, you have the visual picture because our particular tool doesn't show us any visual pictures like this. So this is like, I think, one of our first breakdowns. So you can see a very big part of it, like a lot of people. The big costs for us were logs, custom metrics. We're doing stupid things with both of them. And then the rest was paying for the hosts that we're monitoring. Like they were kind of the main factors. There was lots of other things, but they're the main factors. So you've got this understanding of what are the big things in your bill, what are the big things that are triggering costs. Now go read your contract. Again, even more boring. So what's included and what you have to pay extra for? Are you using the stuff that's included? Has your usage pattern changed since you first negotiated this contract? Have you just been blindly rolling it over? What can you change? And again, your account manager will be a really good help here. If you make a change, are those changes reversible? Because you could be like, hey, I want to switch over to this. And they go, cool. And you go, if it doesn't work out, can I change back? Some things you can't. Is the package you're on still the best fit? It might make more sense for you to go up or down. You'll get more included. Are there any important deadlines coming up specific to the contract or the company? These are just things you need to know. And what is the main factor that drives the costs for your company? It could be hosts, it could be users, it could be events, it could be data retention. You just need to know what it is for you with this particular company. And this is really important. I know it's obvious, but the ordinary users that are using this tool, like the monitoring vendors, they never tell them, hey, if you click on that button, that's going to cost $100 a day. If you set up that's going to cost this much a day. These users don't have any knowledge of what the individual components will cost. And it's my job to ensure that they don't need to. I mean, in the world that it is now, in the ideal world, if you click, I know it would be kind of sad, but you click on something and you go, that's $100 a day. Is it worth it? And you're like, oh, okay. Now I know we're getting there with a lot more visibility into our cloud costs and things like that, but I think people should know what they're building, how much it costs. But within tools like this, it's very opaque. So I have a story of when we first started going through all of these things, and I'm going through the bill and I see, okay, synthetic monitoring, $5,000 a month for the last 5 months. And I'm like, I don't remember setting that up. I don't know if anybody's using that. And it wasn't sending anything to a page. So I reached out to the person who'd set it up and I said, hey, did you set up the synthetic tests? And he goes, yeah. And I said, oh, are you using them? He goes, no, I just thought it was a really cool feature and I turned it on. And I was like, okay. I said, it costs $5,000 a month. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And we just turned it off and it was a really fast win, low-hanging fruit. But this isn't a what an idiot story. He was being a good engineer. He was using the tools. Like we say, use the tools, measure everything. Don't measure everything, seriously. But he was being curious and he was following all the right norms that we want, but we were effectively being punished by that, by the way these tools are set up. So next thing, if you're the admin of this system, start locking it down and take administration of it seriously. Like you're not going to give everybody star rights to like Amazon and the root account. I know someone who tried to give those rights to an intern. It was a fun conversation. But super admins should be a tiny group. Enabling a new feature should require a conversation. It's not going to be a yes-no conversation, but you will have a better idea of what the person needs. And yeah, and also you'll know when a new change comes in, you'll know why, as opposed to blindly finding out about it 6 weeks later when you look at the bill. If there are things that are high-cost triggers, remove access to those. And if somebody's like, oh, I really want to do that thing, the really expensive button, you go, well, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Because you might need to use the high cost feature, but now you were using it with them in a more controlled fashion, or you might have a better solution. For example, this was something that it was hard to see on the bill. This button sent the logs in a wonderful and mysterious journey, and it was very, very expensive, but it would only be pressed when people were doing a troubleshooting thing. So it kind of blended in with everything else, but if you knew where to look for it, it would trigger these massive spikes. And what killed me, it was never, ever useful in terms of troubleshooting. It was just like a Hail Mary of like, maybe if I do that, the answers will magically come up in the terabytes of, yeah, it was. So we just removed access to that function, and we said to people, hey, if you need to do this, come to us. And we kind of were wondering, will there be large pushback against this? No, we ended up having much more productive conversations with the devs, helping them get what they need, and the troubleshooting was actually much more productive. So who monitors the monitoring tool? You need to check, you need to be monitoring what are the norms. So when they change, you understand, you know why. Some tools, they don't let you monitor the cost levels live, but you can monitor, if there's a usage level that directly correlates to those cost levels, monitor those. Again, it might not be live, the data might be a bit old, but if it's a day old, it's better than finding out about it in 6 weeks when the bill comes through. By then you are now 2 months behind and you've burnt 2 months worth of money. There are some things, like there might be some high cost features that you can't disable, and it's just gonna get triggered by somebody updating an agent or doing a PR where they're sending more stuff. And that's outside of your control. But again, if you have monitors looking for anomalous usage levels for a particular thing, like just basically know what all the norms are and have monitors, just nice dumb monitors that will tell you this has changed by 50%. And it's not perfect, but it's faster and more effective than just waiting for the bill. So logs. Now, a well thought out and comprehensive log strategy that is company-wide is a beautiful thing, and we don't have one still. We would love to have one, but yeah, haven't gotten there yet. So instead, what we've had to go for is just strategies, and our logs were in such a mess, we had to go for what can we do, just start. And we started with analysis, and so pretty much, it was like that container full of mystery and crap, and not all logs are equal. So, because you might start by thinking, wow, our logs are really expensive, but logs are important, I guess we need those. Go have a look at what's actually in there. Look at things of like, well, for the logs, how long do we need to keep these? Some of them could be a year, it could be 2 years, some of them, it could be minutes. So what you need versus what you have, break down the volume, look at it by what's the status of these. Like if a lot of them are debug, why? Don't spend money on those. Where are they coming from? And what service it is. Like when you look at your big pile of logs and go, I assume they're all really important, and then you find out the majority of them came from the development environment and are of status info or debug. And you're like, oh, I would have spent that money on something so much more fun, But you start to get a much better picture of what you need to save, what you can drop, and where you can move things around. Have a strategy for debug logs within your company. It's going to be different in every company. Some people feel very strongly about it. I view them as a security blanket that you're using to hide yourself from the truth, that you're not doing real troubleshooting. But but it's more just, I'm just bitter about paying for them. But have a strategy within your company. Don't just blindly assume people will turn it on and then turn it off again. We had somebody enable it for 2 years by accident. Which part is costing the most, production errors or dev info logs? So what we then started to do for reducing this was we would start to drop logs, like not even have them be sent to the vendor. We started to do heavily rate limiting on certain aspects. So what was a big surprise for us was a huge volume of our logs were coming from the dev environment and spikes, but it was particularly spikes. So the constant steady level of logs came from production, but the nearly catastrophic spikes were coming from the dev environment because somebody would be testing something and like, but that's fine. That's what you're supposed to do in your dev environment. You're not supposed to have to worry, oh, the Kafka thing is wrong. And like that's, and you know, if you like, you're testing it Friday evening, it's still broken. You're like, nuts to this, I'm gonna go home. And you're supposed to be able to have that leeway in your dev environment, but it's pretty noisy. So we did the thing of, we separated the destination for the destination index for devlogs, and we do pretty brutal rate limiting on what's sent as well. So also sample the things that are coming in that you choose to accept, sample them where necessary. Allow list by source. We don't actually do this. I would love to do this. I hope to do this soon. This is an idea I got from a Maersk presentation. They have 5 environments, and 5 allowed environments or something. And if it's not one of those exact environments, it's not like dev with a capital D, dev-env, you know. If it's not from one of the pre-approved environments, it just drops them. So which forces you to have really good hygiene about your environment names and labels. Reduce the retention periods. But again, this may or may not apply to the vendor that you have. Some places it's going to make a big difference in your costs, some places not so much. If somebody's saying, oh, you know, I'm sending you a lot of logs, but I never look at them, but we do just need to keep them for a year, and you're going, you never look at them. Yeah, it's just in case auditors. You're like, S3 bucket, my friend. And yeah. And again, once you've kind of done the analysis of where the high volume is coming in, and then you start looking at services, and then you start looking at the logs themselves, you're going to find a bunch of garbage there, and just stop sending it. We built an observability pipeline, which is effectively you're putting a bouncer between what is sending the logs and the vendor. And you can just get it to do some analysis. So you have to pay for the compute of this, but it just does analysis on what we're sending. And then we use it primarily for rate limiting. You can get it to do a lot more analysis, but we find the rate limiting from the stuff that's coming from dev is the highest value for us. And again, this was something that a lot of these ideas actually came to us from the product managers of the vendors, because we were doing it all wrong. They helped us with this. And it was like, okay, so you've got a team with notoriously poor log hygiene. They're not going to fix it. You've had those conversations. Okay, send them to like the sin bin. They go to this index and there is a quota. And when they go above that quota, they lose their logs. You were at peace with this from a reliability point of view because you have tried your best and it's okay for what they're doing. And then you can have another index which is, you know, very high quota, and because these are very important ones, and you know, it's just good to segment things. So yeah, quotas are consequences. So again, another one of my terrible redacted graphs, but this was what happened. I think we only had 1 retention period, and it was reasonably expensive. And then we realized that, so all the stuff, the little blue bars, those are the important good logs. But we were sending, and then the red ones are the shorter term, more lightweight, but incredibly high volume logs. And they were all in the expensive retention period. So then this is when we added a cheaper cost retention period, and we started to send a much higher volume there. So this is the cost difference that it made. This is what it looked like before our observability pipeline installation. So, say somebody in the dev environment, they install something, it goes bananas, it's sending tons and tons of logs. You're going to see it as a spike until they fix it or destroy their dev environment. So it can be hard to detect. So this is on the left-hand side, you've got the ingested log spikes. And on the right-hand side, it's the corresponding cost. So this kind of was a little bit hard to detect. So then we added in an observability pipeline. And in some ways, it's hard to show this as a win because the problem just goes away. But it wasn't a steady problem to detect anyway. So it manifests as there are now no more spikes. But when some of those spikes were costing, you know, up to 20 grand in a week, it's a big difference for us. So custom metrics, the other favorite here. So again, because we had been using this tool since 2015, custom metric creation, it wasn't a problem until it was, until we grew, until sometimes the billing model changes. And again, you've got a growth in complexity of what we are measuring. So this is all going to lead to higher cardinality, which means a higher cost for your custom metrics. Now, what was important was custom metrics were included in what we were paying up to a certain amount, but we were continuously breaching quota and it was just getting worse. So what was really cool was in the first couple of months we did analysis and we realized that 83% of the custom metrics that were generated weren't actually even being queried in any dashboards or monitors. So for this, the API is your friend to get this information. So we kind of looked at all the ones that weren't being used and we reached out to people. We're like, hey, is this important? They're like, what? I didn't make that, kill it, Lots of PRs opened. And we switched to free metrics wherever possible. And these could be ones that are included with maybe an integration, or in our case, it was, okay, you get that exact same data from a trace or something. Why are you using custom metrics? Because traces didn't exist when we set this up. This was a harder journey for us than we thought because, again, huge amounts of tech debt. We were on old versions of code, old libraries. So the whole thing of just switch over. We couldn't get parity, so we had our very accurate custom metric and we had what was supposed to be the substitute, and they didn't match, and we kept trying and trying and it didn't match, and the vendor was helping us for this one. In the end, we had to upgrade Python, and then it worked. But this is where we are now. We pay 0 extra for custom metrics. So this shows costs, not usage. We are still using custom metrics, but it's within what is included with our contract. But so important thing here. So if you can see the ratios here, you can see when we started, logs was 1/4 of the bill, custom metrics was getting to some ugly percentage, and the infra was like just a little bit over 1/4. What we aim for and how we measure our success is the ratio of pretty much the proportion of what we spend on our infra, because that's the factor I cannot move, I cannot change, I have very little control over. I need that to be my biggest cost. If that is not my biggest cost, I'm screwing up. So then you got to go talk to people. There could be a feature and you go, well, that's expensive, but it seems worth it. Is anyone using it? But also, should they be using it? Because if people are like, oh, we don't use it, you can't always just turn it off. It could be a case of, I am deeply worried that you're not using that. Let's have some conversations. But also when you're talking to teams, say, oh, isn't this a very cool tool? They're like, oh, well, it's garbage for this. It doesn't have anything on client-side GraphQL. And you go, oh, okay. Let's have some conversations and see what we need to do. And also, based on what they need, that is going to determine what the M&O team does, because at your heart, you're a service team for all of the devs. So we did a lot of training as well. So we did, the pandemic made a lot of this harder as well. But you've got videos, do tips of the day, office hours, ask me anything, in-person demos, team consultations, tech talks, and onboarding training. I will say this is a hard problem to solve though, because if you say to somebody, look at all these beautiful monitoring resources, they're going to be like, cool, but yeah, in theory, I get it, but it doesn't really sink in until they need it, when they're trying to solve a problem. And when people aren't always in the office, you don't get that lovely osmosis thing that, when you're sitting beside somebody to go, how did you get that list of downstream dependencies? I think it's a little bit harder to share this knowledge. So get your automation in and your safety nets, because you are always going to be behind. You are always outnumbered. Do what you can. It does not have to be pretty. But you're also you're trying to keep up with very prolific feature releases from the vendors and very prolific needs changing from the teams that you were supporting. So our automation that we did was the observability pipeline rate limits and our monitors and quotas. That's kind of what we use to just keep things steady and that we know when we've breached our norms. So how are you going to measure your progress? Again, this is going to be down to the needs of your company and the particular vendor you have. So it could be you're looking at the baseline of the bill. It should always remain below this. And I think for us, it was like the monitoring cost per host is for me, the biggest part of the bill should always be the number of hosts that we're monitoring. And so the ratio of the feature It's features that you're paying for versus the cost per host. So within the first year of our team, we kept the bill at the same amount. Now that doesn't sound super cool, but when the bill was going that way, it was good. We didn't lose any monitoring and observability features. In fact, we added extra. And we did this as our monitored infrastructure grew by 65%. So it's, yeah, the bill stayed the same, but it was really impressive to me anyway. And we also ended up with a much better understanding of the tool and how our devs actually use it. And so putting in this work, it's not that I'm kind of saying, I love this tool, I want to marry it, and we shall never, ever leave. But if you ever want to get rid of that tool or switch to another one or build your own, you need to have this understanding. So you get this understanding, you're saving money, you're helping the devs. There's all the wins. So you must proclaim your victories and your progress wherever you can. Execs need to know why your team exists. Like, that's just a rule that you should always have. Execs need to know what you do and why you are vitally important. Finance needs to know that you are doing due diligence because let's just say for these tools, you're generally on their radar, so they need to know that you're doing their job. You're doing your job, but yeah. Devs need to know that you are adding features and you will listen to them and you will serve their needs, that you're not just cutting costs. And in conclusion, it's like, are we dissing vendor monitoring solutions? I mean, a bit, but no. But like anything as a service, you need to have control and discipline around the usage, unless it's not your job. And then, in case, go, it's fine. Somebody will make it your job eventually. And are we finished? Also no, because again, we're just trying to keep up. There are so many different factors of change, and as your company grows, the numbers of things that can change what you are doing and influence it, that's going to grow. So always room for improvement. And if you think we're fine, we're perfect, we've solved the war on drugs, there's no more drugs, go talk to the teams because they will have needs that you're not meeting. So thank you very much. And if you want to reach out, I'm not really on social media because it's depressing, unless it's cat videos. But I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Joan at Udemy, and say hi in the SREcon Slack. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Joan.